Hey there, my name is Alex and this is my review of Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 4, Oathkeeper. As usual, this will have spoilers, so if you've not watched the episode then let's close this video now. I think it's safe to say that the TV show should no longer really be considered a direct adaptation of the books, but rather inspired by and based on them, as this episode has taken the story as far from the source material as Season 2 did. Which is strange, because Season 2 was the worst season in my opinion. There's no problem with original content, as long as that original content is good. If it's cohesive and makes sense, nobody's going to have a problem with it. I don't hate changes that are made from the books, I only hate changes that are plain stupid. Example, removing Vargo Hoat and replacing him with Locke isn't a bad change. Anyway, I'll start as usual with the things about this episode I did not like. As usual, it's Dany. For a show that is based on books that have tried to show some of the more realistic aspects of warfare, it disappoints me how easily Dany conquers everything. Apparently nothing can stand in the way of the almighty Daenerys, and her segments are basically watching someone play a real-time strategy game on easy mode, whilst having cheats activated. Almost 10 minutes of the episode were taken up by this. And most of it was just masturbatory praise on how amazing she is in every single way. There was one shot I did like though, the one that showed her staring over the city whilst the screams of the dying echoed below. But overall her storyline irritates the hell out of me. You see, the books are written from point of view. Almost everything that happens in Dany's plotline happens exclusively from her perspective, the perspective of a deluded teenage girl who has nobody to educate her on the ways of the world, save for a man who wants into her pants, and an old man who is, let's face it, a hypocrite when it comes to morals and only good at swinging a sword. So at least in the books it is cohesive and consistent to an extent, but in the show, we are looking at her from an external perspective, which gives the showrunners the perfect chance to demonstrate that she is not perfect and that she makes mistakes. Instead, they get ignored or glossed over while she marches her invincible army forward. Gee, she has 8,000 of the strongest infantry in the world and 2,000 sellswords at her command. And who knows how many freedmen. You'd think that's more than enough to take King's Landing, considering that there's no way she would know that the Lannister and Tyrell host is currently there. So, it sure will look stupid when she sits on her ass, doing nothing. Why is she staying in Meereen? Because she needs to learn how to rule? Nope, she's already a perfect leader in the show. So maybe she's staying because she can't feed her army on the march. Again, nope, she's managed not only to feed her army, but the thousands of freedmen slaves as well, as they've not mentioned anything whatsoever about that in the show. So presumably, as they've not mentioned it, all of the slaves are healthy and plump. Which ultimately means one of two things is going to happen. She's either going to march at the end of this season for King's Landing, or she's going to be stuck in Meereen for some nonsense reason that they'll have to magic up out of thin air, and it will probably be laughable. Wow, that was quite a rant, and if you've not gathered, I really don't like Daenerys. I don't like her character in the book, and I hate the messiah she's made to be in the TV show. It just doesn't fit with the rest of the show at all. Most characters have to work and suffer, but she gets everything handed to her on a silver plate and everyone loves her. The only people who don't love her are the evil slavers, who are basically Hitler, of course. But, you know, that's honestly the only real problem I had with this episode, surprisingly. As it happens, I actually quite liked the scene between Grey Worm and Missandei at the start. I was initially confused as to why Sam up and told Jon about Bran, but the more I think about it, it's not like Cold Hands made Sam swear an oath, did he? I mean, Cold Hands isn't actually in the show, but I can't quite remember if Bran and Mira asked Sam to swear not to tell Jon or anyone. But even if he did, well, Sam is a bit of an idiot, and I can understand him breaking a promise he made to a little boy and a girl, whereas a promise sworn to whatever type of monster Cold Hands is would keep his mouth shut. And it became clear why Jon now knows as the episode progressed. It all has to do with the Locke and Bolton plotline going on there. That's actually where most of the changes come from now that I think about it in this episode, with the wall and the the far northern plotline, shall we call it, beyond the wall. So let's talk about that ending, shall we? What are we calling these zombies in the show? White Walkers, others, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if the show even has a distinction between whites and White Walkers, others, and all that stuff. I'll just call him a White Walker. He carries the baby to a city of ice that looks very Lord of the Rings. And then we have another Walker turn the baby into one of their kind. The fate of Craster's children has been speculated on for years, and I do believe this was one of the more common theories. Still, to have it outright confirmed like this was a bit of a shock, I must admit. On the one hand, I'm a little disappointed that they did confirm it. Sometimes it is better to leave things up to the imagination. Still, it was kinda nice to see a little glimpse into that area of the storyline, the more traditional fantasy parts. And book readers might well have noticed that there were 13 walkers, and the lead one had marks on his head that could be symbolic of a crown or Darth Maul. Does that mean he's the Night's King? Probably just a coincidence, but who can say? For those who don't read the books, the Night's King was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who set himself up as a king after falling in love with a pale woman or something like that, and he ruled in the Night Fort. Which, was it the Night's Fort? I forget. The Night Fort, the Night's Fort, whatever. But that's where Bran met Sam at the end of Season 3. And after the Night's King was defeated, they discovered that he had been sacrificing in much the same way that Craster had been doing. Of course, as far as the TV show goes, they probably just had 13 of them because 13 is an unlucky number. I don't know whether or not I like where this is going, but for now I'll say that I'm hesitantly optimistic, because although I think that could have been handled better, it was quite nice to see that White Walker stuff at the end. But as for things that I know I liked about the episode, well, Jaime and Brienne's storyline, or Brienne, whatever, who cares, that storyline continues to be a bit of a highlight for me. I was glad they managed to include Jaime's musings on the White Book, and how he can fill the rest of his pages with whatever he chooses. An important part of his character development, if you ask me. One small change is that Podrick Payne is now with Brienne from the start of her journey, which doesn't really make a big difference, to be honest, and it's probably a good change. I hope they handle that well, however, because Brienne's chapters in A Feast for Crows are some of the worst filler I've ever read. I really hope they can find a way to make that more interesting if they insist on having it in the show. Likewise, Jaime and Tyrion's scene was a nice little one to include, although the scene with Cersei was a little bizarre. It was a good choice to show her drinking. It's the beginnings of her wine-fueled ridiculous rampages that I hope we do see a lot of in the upcoming episodes and next season. Honestly, is there anything more entertaining than Cersei making a complete fool of herself and alienating everyone as she sees assassins in every little shadow? Probably is, actually, but A Feast for Crows had precious little else to entertain me at times. Something the TV show and books share is that they are reaching a point in the narrative where a lot of filler is beginning to, take place, simply to string along the plot to the next big event, and ensuring that it all happens around the same time, without messing up stuff as people travel about, Granted, some characters can move at a startling pace, like Locke arriving at the wall already. But hey, that's just life, and there's no point complaining about, small things like that, really. Who knows? Maybe the Boltons secretly operate an underground railway system that spans the north. Considering it's completely original, I actually really enjoyed the last quarter of the episode or so that featured Dirk Bastardbane, aka Carl Tanner. I think a lot of that is because Bern Gorman is a great actor and has great presence on screen, even though some of it was, well, you might argue the whole scene was filler and some was more fillery than the rest of it. It was entertaining filler nonetheless, so I've no problem with it. Everything is setting up for a big battle next episode, and it looks like the Castle Black battles are going to be rolled into one, which actually does make a degree more sense if you ask me. Attacking a castle from both sides at the same time makes more sense than relying on a sneak attack. Now granted, they didn't originally plan on that, as they thought they'd be able to take it from the south without any trouble, but thanks to Jon Snow that didn't exactly go according to plan. And it looks like we'll be having a Stark family reunion, doesn't it? And just what treachery is Locke going to get himself up to, I wonder. Well, next week we get more Sansa, some Arya and the Hound, Tommen's coronation and the battle at Craster's Keep. And what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below.